This episode of our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by Zapper. Zapper is one of the world's leading XR companies. Over the past 12 years, they've won numerous awards for memorable campaigns. They've democratized AR by making tools and SDKs that anyone can use. And they created ZapBox, the world's most affordable mixed reality headset. Most recently, Zapper worked with Unilever to create an enhanced QR code called Accessible QR, which enables packaged goods to speak to the blind and partially sighted. If you're thinking XR, give the team at Zapper a call or visit zapper.com to see how they can help you on your XR journey. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink. For This Week in XR, it's Friday, March 8th, 2024. I am live in Austin, Texas for South by Southwest. I'm joined by Lucas Martell, the founder and CEO of Mighty Coconut, the company responsible for the Walkabout Mini Golf game and actually series of adventures and courses. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to hit the news real quickly. Rony and Ted are both en route to South by Southwest. We'll be on stage on Tuesday talking about the future of XR and the Vision Pro and XR and AI and all that good stuff. It'll be a spirited conversation. Rony said promises to do something crazy. For those of you who have been following his career, when I think he announced or introduced Magic Leap in 2014 while wearing a spacesuit at a conference. So I'm not quite sure what he has in mind, but it'll be good. And South by Southwest, as we said last week when we had Hugh Forrest and Blake Cammerdiner, the head of XR, on the show to do a curtain raiser for South by Southwest. So we'll skip that today. Let me hit the news real quick, and then Lucas and I will talk about all things South by and Walkabout Mini Golf. First of all, Sora continues to release videos every week, and every week the freakout in Hollywood gets bigger and bigger. I don't know why they're so freaked out. They can't match two shots together. We're not going to make Hollywood movies using Sora. That is flat out impossible if you know anything about how movies are made. However, if you make YouTube videos, you are in luck because you can make endless music videos with Sora. It apparently just has a tremendous imagination and will build you a drone shot or some kind of a dramatic urban scene. And they just keep releasing the videos and the freak out keeps building up. A couple of other things happened this week. Not a huge news week for a change. There's a new AI startup called Haiper out of London, founded by Google DeepMind engineers. They're taking on Pika and Runway, and I guess Sora. Good luck to them. Perplexity is about to become a unicorn. If you recall, they raised $520 million 2 months ago, and now with some add-ons, it looks like they're going to hit $1 billion valuation. So welcome to the winner's circle, Perplexity. I am shocked in a way by this valuation. They're taking on Google. Every company that is taken on Google in search is dead. So yeah, another new AI adventure, Bali. Jabali raised a $5 million seed round from Bitcraft and Sony. They are founded by Amazon, Meta, Zynga, Microsoft, the usual cast of characters who manages to raise money in this environment. They are taking on AI generation of video games, which is a whole nother step of abstraction from actually making a movie. It's much harder to generate images like that on a fly based on what's happening in a game. The AI feature film, Our T2 Remake, was released yesterday. It's the product of 50 cinematic AI creators who all came together on Discord and split up a fan parody of the Terminator. I've put up the trailer in the Forbes column, but go on and check them out. I couldn't figure out where the heck you could watch the whole thing, but I'm sure it's going to be on YouTube any day now. Oh, Avenged Sevenfold, Amaze VR, the company that did the Megan Thee Stallion VR concert, which they toured around the country 2 years ago, is back with another VR concert from Avenged Sevenfold. So I guess they are a big act. I hadn't heard of Megan Thee Stallion before they introduced me to her, so I guess I'm about to meet Avenged Sevenfold. So that's the news today. I don't have Rony and Ted to break it up with their insightful comments.
Sorry, I'm not a great I'm not a co-host, so
You're not
I
a
need to,
co-host. So
I was like,
Lucas,
I'm just gonna sit here until I'm addressed.
I told Lucas I was going to rip through the news in 5 minutes. There, I may have done it in two. There, like I said, not a big news week, other than everything that's been going on in tech is still going on, including Elon Musk now making more noise about maybe supporting Donald Trump and suing OpenAI, and it's just the weekly Musk tantrum. He should run for president because he cannot stand being out of the public eye for 1 minute. That's really what's going on there. I am here. My first appointment at South by Southwest was to come to a venue where Walkabout Mini Golf is having an event and making a major press announcement that we're going to get a peek at here. Unfortunately, it's not live. And this recording probably won't be up until hours after the announcement is made. So first, this is a big event. I came here straight from the airport hotel. So why am I here? Tell me what's going on.
So we're really excited to announce one of our next licensed courses that's going to be coming up this summer. So it won't be the next course or two, but it's going to be coming up pretty soon. But we are going to be doing Wallace and Gromit as the mini golf course. So you're going to get to play through Wallace and Gromit's house and tons of gadgets, tons of references to the film. And yeah, we actually met with the folks at Aardman. They actually came to this event last year at South by Southwest and just hit it off. And yeah, it's been fantastic to work with them. And we're so thrilled to be, finally getting to play around with their toys a little bit, just because the characters and all of the way they make movies is just so fantastic.
I love this for you. You guys are cartoonists at heart.
Yeah.
You're animators at heart, and you fill your environments with all sorts of interactivity and animations. This just makes total sense.
Yeah, and the tone of it has very much that sort of, even if you look at Wallace and Gromit, it's always very fun, it's very colorful, it's very just like pretty to look at, but it also has this very slight dark tinge to it that is just absolutely like fantastic and it's very much in line with what we're doing.
And are Wallace and Gromit going to show up?
Yeah, so they'll actually be there. They are not going to be, you won't be golfing with them because it's going to be much more like our other courses. So we're still working on the details. But yeah, you will actually be seeing Wallace and Gromit as you pass through the environment. But it's all set in their house. And the general sort of conceit that we've been going with is that Wallace, one of his mini business ideas, he's just started a mini golf house or a mini golf course in his house. It's going to be a little different than some of the other courses because it's actually physically not as large as some of the courses, but what it means is that you get this density because the films and all the little details that happens with stop motion, walking through it, you get just this really rich experience that's going to be fantastic and definitely feel a little different than some of the other courses.
Many of your courses, though, include an indoor-outdoor thing, right? You go inside for a few holes, you're in an old shack or an old mill.
Totally.
And the next scene, you walk out a door and you're on the side of a mountain.
Yeah.
That is. So anyway, walking in here.
Yeah.
I walked through a room with all the posters of all the courses, what we call DLCs or downloadable content.
Yeah.
All the new courses. It looks like you guys have about 24 courses and that you're dropping one a month, it seems.
I think we're actually dropping one about every 6 to 7 weeks now. We actually backed off a little bit just because we were starting to get a little crunchy just with the pace. We've realized that really the way that we do production is almost sort of like a TV show, that we've always got at least 6 or 7 courses that are in active production at any given time, just that some are early on, some are like in production, some are in post. One of them's usually done 6 weeks before we launch it, but then you've got to get all the marketing for it and everything. So yeah, so it's quite the operation, but now we're realizing that we're pretty much like working on like an 18-month schedule. So we know the courses that are going to be dropping all the way through middle of 2025. And we're just starting to work on them and spreading that out amongst the pipeline. So yeah, about every 6 to 7 weeks. And we just dropped our 25th course yesterday. So Ice Layer was number 25.
You got a huge audience. I think you're a top 10 game on the Quest. Tens of thousands of people are playing your game every day. How does that feel?
It feels great. I think that I come from the film world, and it has been so nice to have something like this where we get to create something that is different than anything we've done before. And then 6 to 7 weeks later, there's so many different things going on at once, but 6 to 7 weeks later, we get to drop something that is totally different. Unlike a TV show where there's generally a bit more structure and a bit more like you're playing in the same world. It is so fun to have this cadence, and it feels a little bit like trying to think of a really good analogy, but whereas most games you spend 4 to 5 years working on and spending all your time and energy in this one world, we've got a style and we've got our format is mini golf, but the worlds that we're able to create feels very quick and off the cuff, and we're able to work really fast and kind of embrace the happy accidents that happen. Maybe Bob Ross is probably one of the better examples of that, perhaps.
The Bob Ross, the painting guy.
Yeah. It's all happy accidents. Like so many of the things that have happened that have become like iconic for folks is often, oh yeah, it was that one little place where we messed something up and someone misinterpreted it and then it got modeled in this different way, or someone had an idea late in the game, we're like, we should do that, and someone whips it up really quick because it is so flexible and fluid and working so quickly.
That's true, as opposed to shrink wrap console games.
Yeah.
You can always update your software.
Yeah. And we're even doing that now. We just re-released Tourist Trap, which was the very first course. We did a complete remaster of that one. We will be having another. We're planning to go back and remaster most of those original courses. So timing TBD on that.
I am so in love with your original courses, though. I have to say, when I take my class into Walkabout, I always go to either the mining town or that Don Quixote set that is hanging off the side of a mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that really the ones that sort of popped out were more because it started as a solo project. And for the most part, those initial 4 courses were done by me and maybe one other person. So they just, when you look at the rest of the courses, they just don't have the sophistication of the lighting. We were limited to Quest 1 at the time, so there just wasn't, we weren't pushing things as far. Now it's okay, we can do more with the models and really let the full team go back and re-envision it, but in a way that doesn't, it's not going to change gameplay. It's not going to really change the fundamental experience. It's just that it's going to be a lot prettier is really what it comes down to.
Before we leave this and pivot to talking about XR and AI and where we think we're going with devices, and entertainment, I wanted to get back to the number of courses, because these very big audience of yours, is that what's keeping them glued to you? Is the cadence of course releases, or how does that fit in with the community aspect, which is usually the sticky part?
Yeah, so that's absolutely the model that we're following, that we found that if we go for, I would say, more than 2 months without dropping a new course, people tend to just drop off, and there's so much friction with headsets still that if someone puts it in the drawer and they don't have a chance to put it back on, it runs out of battery, it doesn't update, whatever happens. I think there's just some general friction that is actually that we're working against, which is getting better and better with each new hardware release. But yeah, we've absolutely found that we also need to keep releasing new content on a very regular basis. This heartbeat that keeps the game fresh and causes people to get back in and even check out old stuff. We also are going to be doing some stuff later in the year that I don't want to commit too much to exactly what we're doing, but there's going to be some more game modes coming. There's going to be some more ways of playing even the existing content that are in there that I think is really going to add more opportunities and even be a good excuse for people to go back and play something that they might have already played 6 or 7 times, but experience it a whole new way with a different gameplay mode.
So now the Quest 3 is out.
Yeah.
And it's at a very accessible price. It's packed with terrific technology. And the pass-through is really good, I think. Comparable to the $3,500 Apple Vision Pro. Perhaps not as elegant in many ways, but very effective. And they have terrific spatial mapping, outward-facing cameras that actually map the room in front of you, the way the Magic Leap and the HoloLens did. That's a lot of quality and a lot of technology for $500 or $600. So the first time I saw it mapping a room, and I'm telling you, this is the truth. The first time I saw it mapping a room, I thought, oh my God, Lucas Martell and the Mighty Coconut guys are going to town. So tell me I'm right.
I have to say, I think that we've explored the mixed reality or the polyspatial stuff a decent bit, and we're absolutely playing with it. It does still feel like it's so early on, and a lot of the things that you need to do, like it's very easy to imagine what you would want to do. I think that with Walkabout in particular, though, that it's so much about going into another world that while we could absolutely get mini golf working in your living room, I think the biggest challenge for us is that if you're trying to, like, so many of our users are playing because they want to meet up with people who they don't share the same physical space with. And without that same physical space, it really is like it causes more breaking to not be in that same physical space. Now, that doesn't apply to all games. I think it's just that our game is so environmental that it's actually more effective for you to be like exploring this one particular world with somebody, because then you actually feel like you're in the same virtual room with them. So yeah, that's not in any way to like knock any of the mixed reality or spatial stuff. I think it's just our game is it's a bit of a unique.
But it is true that your game is really as much about the environment. And like the environment is really the character that you're interacting with.
Yeah.
And you're in the belly of the beast, so to speak. So to give the illusion that you're in a place, obviously full occlusion is better than mixed reality.
Totally, yeah. But I think that there's going to be a lot more games, and I think that now that it's out there and it's a bit more ubiquitous, I think that you're going to start to see a lot more experimentation in that space. I think it's going to be a little while before you see people even talk now that there's very few like AAA VR games. I think that mixed reality is like where VR was like in the original DK2 days, where you're going to have some people that are going to be doing some really cool, really small experimentation, but it's going to take a couple of years for it to get to the point that there's actually games that are really designed for that. But at the same time, I could also see it's a great application, though, for even maybe more existing games like platformers or tabletop sort of things. Like that works fantastic. Something like Demio, yeah, you don't gain a whole lot by seeing the rest of the room around you because it's all about the table. So if you could do that and still be engaged with the people around you, then absolutely. That's
wouldn't that be great if you could play a tabletop game with somebody else? It's a multiplayer experience.
Oh, yeah.
Chess pieces are there.
Yeah, totally.
And you can move them around.
Yeah. And I believe that you can. You have to, it's a...
Demio tries to do things like that.
Yeah, with the spatial anchors, it's a technically difficult, it's not that bad. A lot of the platforms mostly take care of it for you, but it's not easy. But yeah, it's, for a lot of games, it's now accessible or will be coming more soon.
So have you used the Apple Vision Pro? What's your take on it?
Yeah, I always am hesitant to go too deep onto the hardware side of things, just because we partner with pretty much everybody. So we always sort of like, so I have to
friend to all, threat to none.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it took me a day of using it, not just like playing around developing stuff on it, to really wrap my head around what they were doing with it. And now that I've gotten a chance to actually, I've got a MacBook Pro, so the fact that I could just look at it and it pops up in a giant screen, like I now understand what they're doing, that it's basically, it really is more about simulating what everyone's ideal version of augmented reality would be, that if you had just glasses that were true pass-through, that are physical pass-through, where you're actually seeing the environment around you, you can feel that is really like where they're going with it. And it's super cool. I'm very curious to see how it evolves, because I know that where it wants to, what they're setting you up for is a future that is probably 5 years of hardware away until you get to that point that it's actually possible.
Because it feels like a developer unit.
Yeah, and I think that I don't think that's saying anything bad at all to be like this first.
The only thing I would say is, you and I know it's a developer version. There's not a lot of content on there.
Right, yeah.
But they're not marketing it that way.
Yeah.
They're marketing it to everybody.
Exactly.
And I suppose if you have $5,000 burning a hole in your pocket,
yeah,
you could get it, but you'll be back to the Quest 3 pretty quickly, because there just isn't that much content.
Yeah.
And there's not much mixed reality content on the Quest 3. If I have a criticism of the Quest 3, is that it's packed with technology that no one can figure out how to use yet.
Yeah. And I think that some of that is also just that it is a whole new paradigm for that. And it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna take a little while for all of that content to come, and and people, just like with VR, where there's now standards with even the controllers of, okay, here's how every game implements teleporting the exact same way with the thumbstick forward, and just some basic things like that, that now in mixed reality, you've got a whole new set of things, like how do you set up your space? How do you do all that? Hopefully things will get easier, and some standards will develop around that'll make it easier.
What's going on with Sony? Are you on the PlayStation also?
Yeah, we're on PSVR 2.
And PSVR 2, there was just an obituary written, because there are so few compatible consoles. And my prediction that everybody who has Sony VR already has it. And isn't going to upgrade to the 5 and buy the new console and the new headset. So it's asking a lot, and Sony seems to be very disappointed with the results.
I think that some of that, and again, I'm always a little cautious because we're on it. We've actually had I feel like it's actually done pretty well for us, but I think that we also have a social game. It's full crossplay, which did take some work to make sure that
When you say crossplay, so player on the console can play with me in VR.
exactly. Yeah. If you're on a Quest or whatever you're on, they could play with you. It'll also, as we drop the Pocket Edition, the iPhone version of the game, it'll be full crossplay with that. We've announced that a while. We're still chipping away at that. Maybe I shouldn't throw that into the mix quite yet. But I think the PSVR 2 really appeals to a lot of folks who already have a PlayStation 5. And there's a lot of those out there. And I think it's tough because VR is still, it's in this weird sort of like awkward middle school years a little bit where there's not enough of them out there to really go head to head with AAA games. But at the same time, like it is reaching a point where it's harder to release. Like when I released Walkabout Mini Golf as a solo dev, most of the other people were doing the same thing. And it was totally adequate to have, 4 courses, just get it up onto the store, see what happens. And then a lot of games that are now really the popular games came from that, and studios have grown up around them. But yeah, I think that we're just in this weird sort of space where, yeah, it can support a small dev team, but not a full AAA team. And a lot of the larger studios just don't know how to create a game with that, like 10 to 20 people over a year or 18 months. It's a different type of production that you have to do.
Are you freaking out about AI?
I'm not really. I understand why a lot of folks are. We don't really use AI for anything other than, I can tell you what the one thing that we started using it for. When we're ideating courses, a lot of times we'll like commune with like Midjourney or something just to help, like it always injects us some really insane things. And sometimes we grasp onto them.
Sure. It's all about curation with those image generators.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think that like now I feel really bad for anyone who was making a living doing like doing like book covers, because those one-off images,
people doing illustrations for magazines are out of business.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that is still a business.
Yeah.
But to the extent that it is, now it's really over.
Yeah. It was already getting pretty lean, or a lot of like stuff that was maybe like, honestly, the one thing that I could see something like Sora taking over would be like so many commercials that are more stock.
Exactly. Stock footage houses are out of business.
Yes.
That's really who's going to be the first victim of Sora.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, I don't think there's any way it's going to, maybe for previs, have anything to do with movies.
Yeah.
It will spawn a million TikTok videos.
Yeah.
For sure, we will get they'll all look the same too.
Yeah.
You're going to get tired of it really fast.
Yeah.
But we'll see. They're aware of the weaknesses. This is a very big, well-funded company with tremendous ambition. Who knows where this is going to go in 2, 3, 4 years? If you let your mind wander, you can get yourself worked up.
Yeah.
But the reality is pretty mundane right now.
Yeah. And I would say that it's also, you had mentioned earlier that if you know how movies are made, you understand that you couldn't use Sora for it. Mostly that's coming down to, I'd imagine that your point with that is that you can't just feed it like, oh, it's this actor doing this thing. Like the shots aren't going to match up at all. But I could see in a couple of years getting that level of direction where you're able to, start this, make him go faster. Make sure that his hair matches this photo. And you can start feeding it more prompts that might get there.
Maybe special effects, fight scenes. That's how it's going to start, right? And 2 people fighting on top of the building with an impossible angle. And so that's the sort of thing I think it'll be really good for. Crazy establishing shots in science fiction movies. But it's not acting, the nuance of performance, the understanding a director has, and control of lighting. And I just don't see any of the AI tools really getting that. They imitate it well.
I think
but the original thing. But they need the original thing to imitate it. And there isn't enough of it, and it's not consistent enough. I do think that the model training is going to get really pretty good.
And I think that it's
but even if you have a perfect model of Robert De Niro, the thing is not going to give you Robert De Niro's performance. It could have Robert De Niro's voice, but it's not going to give you Robert De Niro's performance. And the deepfake Tom Cruise notwithstanding, that's a TikTok video.
Now, though, I can see more where so someone is able to act out, like the idea of like almost digital makeup, where it's almost more like digital puppeteering, where like
Joe Biden falls down the stairs.
Or that was, I believe, the basis of the Tom Cruise, is that it was actually fed in as like an actor giving a performance who wasn't Tom Cruise, but then they did all that. Is, I think, where I see that happening is that I feel like it's going to, we already mentioned stock footage houses and people doing illustrations, that it's taking a little bit. I think that tide is going to continue to rise, and you might start to see that, oh, there's gonna maybe certain like lower budget series might start integrating that.
Well, I think in animation, you'll start to see more. Probably not high-end animation, but it wants like a computer animation to disappear.
Yeah.
You shouldn't know when you're watching a movie whether a shot was generated with AI, nor should you care.
Yeah.
Because you're there for the story and the characters, not for the technology that made the entertainment.
Yeah. And I would say that I feel like for someone like me, because my job more in like creative director is so much about like the choosing what we're going to do and like just helping like steer things, that I think the thing that scares me is for a lot of the younger folks who are getting into the industry, because it's so much, like you mentioned, like games being a very difficult thing for AI AI isn't going to generate a full game. But the idea of AI generating a 3D model that can be used in a game, I could see that, and especially
there's anything world will let you use your voice to animate a character.
Yeah.
To rig an animated character.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we've been seeing that some of those more entry-level jobs, or like I know rotoscoping in the VFX world was a big thing that is now, depending on the show, and like I haven't been in that world for a few years, but that was something that was a great entry-level job and as a way for someone to get their foot in the door. And I think it's going to become harder for folks to just jump into the world where they're maybe directing AI, or you need that sort of like that activity of whatever it is that you're doing. If it's rotoscoping or if it's helping clean up animation or whatever, you need that as a way to like just learn how the business works and learn how a studio works and learn how to work with other people. And I worry a little bit about many of those people who are just now getting into the industry, because it's also, frankly, it was a rough year for especially film, but even the wider flat games world too. So I think that's the thing that I'm most concerned about AI creating a gap where some people will jump onto it, but then you're going to have an upcoming kind of generation of folks who maybe hasn't gone through that. And of course, that now I'm starting to sound like a very old.
Here's the thing that applies to all businesses.
Yeah.
The more virtual we become, the harder it is for people to have apprenticeships.
Yeah.
Right. When you started out, or when I started out, there were people who were my mentors who didn't even know they were my mentors.
Yeah.
But I was observing them and working with them and learning how to do what they did.
Yeah.
And so much of that, it's so much more important when you're younger, when you're our age and you're a mature artist, and you have a bond of trust and you know how the system works, you can work remotely pretty effectively today.
Exactly.
But if you're breaking in, and I heard this from a lot of my students who were entering the workforce during the pandemic, and some of them got good jobs at Meta and other places, and later told me it was really hard to work there because they were only interacting with people on Zoom. They had very disconnected from their superiors. Because remember, your superiors generally don't walk up to you and interact with you, but you're in the room with them.
Yes. And
that's how you get noticed. That's how you figure out what's going on with the company. So you have some kind of context. And I think those young people were just out adrift without any of that.
And I think that's maybe why I'm thinking of that angle specifically, because that's even something. So we're a remote studio, and we even talked about that with some of our team that's coming straight out of school or just younger, just because that being in the room, like that's how you learn. That's such a necessary experience to have. And you don't. So my very first, I was an intern at a post-production house doing commercials, but sitting in on editorial sessions where you've got an editor, you've got an assistant, then you've got a couple of agency folks.
Right.
You learn how to communicate in that world and also be present, but also make sure that you don't say something that's going to cause them to. There was one time where like I threw out an idea and the editor pulled me aside afterwards. That was a great idea, but I was trying to get them to do X, Y, and Z, and I really needed them to sign off because we have to ship this. And when you throw out that idea, then they want to explore it, or just it unraveled, and it made me realize just how much was going on behind the scenes that I didn't realize. And I think that's where I'm getting at with even the AI stuff for younger folks, is that as you're virtual and as you're doing less of that sort of like, you have fewer of those opportunities, it feels like that's going to be a big challenge. It's going to take a while to figure out how to get around it.
So let's wrap up with talking about South by Southwest just a little bit.
Yeah.
So as an Austin native, do you love it or hate it?
Both. Both is fine. Yeah, no, I've been doing South by. Actually, one of my very first jobs at that post-production house was doing a lot of the work for all the South by Southwest film stuff. So keep seeing every single tape. So like my history, I've been involved with South by Southwest for pretty much 20 years, 22 now. So yeah, it's awesome. It's so great to have people come into town. It feels like it's changed so drastically. Like every 4 or 5 years, it feels like the focus and the content just completely shifts, because it was music, it was film, then interactive really came over. And even now it feels like interactive is splitting out. And now you've got more XR focused, you've got AI focused, you've got traditional tech. It's just, yeah, it can be a little unwieldy to try to even think about South by Southwest as a whole. It's almost more just like everyone's in town. What are you going to do while everyone is in Austin?
That's all the show we've got today, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry my co-hosts weren't with us, but we will put up the recording of our panel at the end of next week. Lucas, it's a pleasure to be with you in the real.
Yeah.
That's one of the great things about South by Southwest is the way the community convenes here. I think half the people I know are here and the other half are having FOMO wherever they are.
Yeah.
And I would just say to those people, remember, when you're here, you have even more FOMO. So it's impossible to do everything, although I'm going to try and see the important people like you. Congrats again on the continued success of Mighty Coconut and Walkabout. It is really one of the bright spots in the VR world, and I can't wait to see what you guys do next.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's our show, everybody. Have a great week.